I hope you are all having a wonderful day. And this is the Ask Ken show. It's so great to meet all of you. And if you're watching this, it's not by accident. So, welcome. And what I do for a living, full time for a living, is I train people on how to channel. Yes, that's right. Because the reason I do this is because think of it this way: channeling is the foundation to all spirituality. When you learn how to channel at really, really high levels, like think what you could do with that. So this is the Ask Ken show. And the way that this works is that you could go ahead and ask anything to do with spirituality, anything spiritual, and I will live channel the answers. And that's why I do this, because a couple reasons. One is a lot of people just have a lot of questions about spirituality, like what is it, how does it work, and what is your soul family, what are your spirit guides, and all those kinds of things. And then also, I want to show people that like what I'm doing is I'm live channeling right now, like live right here, right in front of you. And you can do this too. You can. Like we all have the ability to live channel. So why not learn how to access that and these superpowers that we all have and access, souls and beings and sprites and fairies and our ancestors and our loved ones on the other side of the veil. And, we can do this. And it's not as hard as you think. But with a little bit of formal training and a little bit of practice, you can have these skills for a lifetime. And not just like a little bit. A lot of people come to me and they think that they're channeling, and it's not that they're not, but they think that they're channeling like this much. And then they take my certification workshops and they're like, whoa, okay, really, I'm only channeling here, but that's okay. Because then as they get through channeling level 1, they're like, wow, look how much more I'm channeling. And then level 2, wow, look how much more I'm channeling. And then level 3 and so on. And then to my mastermind classes, all that kind of cool stuff. So the way that the Ask Ken show works is that what you do is if you have any spiritual questions at all, just go ahead and type it in that chat box. And what I will do is I will live channel the answers so that you can get the answers that you're asking. And while so some of the questions that I have that come in is, what is your soul? So your soul, it's actually, if you think of it, it's like I could give a really superficial answer and just say, well, it's this part of your body, da 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 da. But your soul is actually, if you think of it, it is the essence of who you are. So it does, yes, it does reside here in the center of your sternum area. So if you look at your heart center, your chakras, this is your heart chakra, and then your solar plexus chakra is just below that. And in between is actually where your soul resides. So in a lot of theologies in the world, they call this the seat of your soul. So it kind of sits in this area. And yes, it emanates beyond that. But what is your soul really? What is your soul really? If you think of it this way, when you die and you cross over, your soul will go to the astral realm to be with your soul family. Your soul is eternal. It is that eternal, it is the essence of who you are. There was a scientist in the early 20th century, 19 something, 1916 or something like that. And he was working with patients who were dying, like dying patients. And so one time he got curious, and what he did is he put the bed that the patients were laying on, he put it on a scale. And then sure enough, at that moment of death, that scale would change and the mass of the person would actually become less at the moment that their soul left their body. And it's a few grams, several grams. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but your soul actually has mass to it. It really does. It has mass. It has weight. So when you die, your body will actually become several grams less. And this experiment has been proven over and over and over again by many scientists around the world. And that's because what happens is, and when you learn to channel your soul, you'll realize like souls have a very distinct characteristic to them. They're actually thick. Like you can almost like put your hand through it, and it's like dense. It's like has like substance to it. It really does, like a texture. And so your soul is the operator of this container. If if you were to, let's say you go into a coma, and there's exceptions to this, so I want to make that clear. But let's say somebody goes into their coma, into a coma, and then their soul leaves their body, And they're like, no, I'm not coming back. It doesn't matter how long they keep the container alive, like through machines and modern technology. Now they can, hook the person up to breathing apparatuses and other kind of machines. And it doesn't matter how long that body is being kept alive by these machines. If that soul doesn't come back, it's not coming back, and that person won't come back alive. So there's this, this thing about like cryogenics. Cryogenics is basically where people theorize that if they freeze their bodies or freeze their brains, their head, or freeze their body, that someday in the future, a few hundred years from now or a few thousand years from now, that scientists will learn how to bring them back to life. And I don't disagree with that. I think that's very possible. I think that they'll be able to bring the physical container back to life. But my question is, and I think this is where the scientists are going to struggle with, is what about the soul? What if the soul has left that body and has no intention of coming back? Or what if that soul has incarnated as a baby into another body and is living somewhere else on the planet? You see that? I think that's going to be the dilemma. I think that'll be the struggle that scientists are going to struggle with, is how do I get that soul to come back and operate that machinery again, operate that, the body, the container. So that's an interesting concept about our soul. And the reason why I explain this analogy or this example is because that is what our soul is. Our soul is the most important component of us. It is what makes us up as a human. It is what makes us up as a person. Without our soul, we wouldn't exist. And with our soul, though, we can do these things like come into a body, incarnate this body for a certain amount of years, and then when we die and we cross over, we go back to the astral realm to be with our soul family, where there's a bunch of other souls. And then when we choose to incarnate again, we'll acquire a different body in a different lifetime, and most likely in a different part of the world, maybe the same gender, or maybe a different gender, hard to say, and most likely in a different culture and definitely in a different era. So that is your soul. That is the part of you that goes from basically lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, that makes the body come alive. That it is, because it is alive. And so when you die, you don't actually die. Your soul just crosses over to the other realm, the astral realm, and joins your soul family, which is really beautiful. And there's a lot of faiths and religions around the world that believe in reincarnation, but it's been proven. There'll be like a child is born and he's able to describe like a fighter jet, and he's never flown a fighter jet, and these different turned out he in his past lifetime he fought in World War II, something like that. So this has been proven over and over again. So if you're watching this is called the Ask Ken Show. This is your show. You get to ask any questions that are spiritual. Please type in your name, say where you're from, just say a hello. Or if you have a question, that would be great as well. Go ahead and type that in. Let's see if we can get to another question here. Okay, so how do I know what to share with others when I'm passing along a message to them? Okay, so what this question it's basically what we're talking about is different kinds of readings. So we can do a whole bunch of different kinds of readings. We could do spirit guide readings for others. We can do ancestral readings. We can do loved one readings. That's called mediumship. We can do past life readings. We can do what other kind of readings can we do? We could do ancestral readings, and I could go on and on and on. Near-death experience readings, dream interpretation. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of readings that we can do, and I train my students how to do these. And we actually practice it experientially in the class. So rather than just talk about it, I say, okay, let's practice. Let's put you in a group partners, and we're going to practice doing spirit guide readings. We're going to practice channeling loved ones. We're going to practice doing past life readings, and so on and so on. So it's really cool, really fun. In theory, so I've heard some practitioners, psychics, and stuff like that. They just say, "Oh, what I do is I just pass along all the messages that come to me. I'm just a conduit. I just pass along everything." I don't really recommend that. So here's the thing: it's like souls are kind of like humans. Like humans, in the ideal world, all souls would behave, would be nice and don't get me wrong, most souls are fine and all that, and they're good intentions, but some are a little bit mischievous and things like that. Not in a bad way, just you know what I mean. So what I do and what I train my students to do is when you're channeling someone else's, let's say, spirit guide, and you're giving a spirit guide reading, or someone else's loved one and you're giving a loved one reading, is what I do, and I teach my students this, is to work very closely with your spirit guides. And that's why I get them to know their spirit guides really well, because they will help you know what messages to pass along and which ones not to. Sometimes you can pass along a message to somebody and it can be really detrimental to them. And then next thing you know, they're dwelling on what this message that you gave them, and they're going over and over in their mind and their head, and they're thinking, oh man, this and oh man, that. And then it actually can put them in a downward spiral and in not a healthy way. So what I definitely recommend is that you channel your spirit guides, work with your spirit guides to know what messages to pass along and which messages not to. And your spirit guides are in communication with their spirit guides. So this is pretty advanced training here that I'm talking about. Like, this takes a bit of time and practice to get to good at this. But what I do, and I do this purposely, is I teach my students how to do this right off the bat, rather than just teach them, oh, just go to their spirit guides, give a message, go to their loved ones, give a message. No, no, no. Work with your spirit guides always. And there's many reasons why. One is protection. That's an obvious one. You want to make sure you're protected, and but the bigger reasons is because your spirit guides are kind of like they're kind of like mentors, right? So they're if when you what you want to do is you want to keep in communication with your spirit guides as you're doing the reading. So if you kind of go off track, you're like, oh, what about this? And they're like, no, 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 go this straight. Oh, okay. What about this? No, not quite. How about this? Oh, what about this? Yeah, that's good. How about this? Yeah, that's even better. Yeah. How about this? Not quite. How about this? Yeah, that's good. And then they're keeping you on track and on path while you're doing that reading for your client, friend, family member, whoever it might be. So, really good question. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's kind of like the gist of how to know what to share and not to share. And your spirit guide will help you with that. If you're watching this is the Ask Ken Show. Please go ahead, type in your questions in the chat group, in the chat there that you see, and I will answer the questions. Thank you very much. And also, if you're watching, please say where you're from. I'll give you a shout out, and thank you for showing up. Just at least say hello. So, hi, Shelly. Welcome, welcome. We have Joseph. Thank you, Joseph, for signing in and saying hello. Where are you from, Joseph? Okay, so Shelly wants to know more about dragons. Ooh, dragons are fun. And dragons are real, by the way. They really are. Okay, so this is my channeling level 3 expert level, where I teach people how to channel dragons, sprites, fairies, dragons, angels, crystal divas, elementals, you name it, all those kinds of things, sprites, pixies, crystal divas, cool things like that. Yeah, ascended masters. But yeah, so dragons are actually members of the elemental kingdom. So if you ever watch like The Hobbit and things like that, and the dragons in the mountains and in the ore and the jewels and the different kinds of like metals and stuff like that and all that, and there's some truth to that. So if you think of like remember back in high school, whatever, in chemistry class, they talked about the periodic table, the elemental periodic table that had the different elements on it. That's where the name elementals come from, because they're elementals are part of the planet, of the earth. So these are like your pixies and your sprites and your fairies and so on and so on. They love water and nature and all that stuff. um, then there's another group of beings called celestial beings. So that's a different classifications. And those are ones that are in the celeste, in the space, in the universe. And those are like, so like angels, unicorns, different things like that. Those are all celestial beings. And then there's other ones like the Lord of the Akashic Records is a celestial being, and on and on and on. So what we're talking about when we're talking about dragons is we're talking about elementals. So they are of the earth, of the planet. Oh, and one just came up giving me goosebumps right now. So not all of this is so dragons, sometimes people will have a dragon that helps and assists them for a certain season of their life. but it doesn't mean you can't call on a dragon. Even if you don't have a dragon as an assistant in this season of your life, you can still work with them to help you with different things. So they're really good about helping to work on like cleansing and clearing things, because they use like their the flames of their, you know, their the dragon flame, the dragon breath, just and they can clear out things. So I use them a lot for like property clearing. I use them for clearing certain things when I work with clients. I also work with them to help clear certain things on myself. There's lots of ways that you can use dragons to help and assist you in your daily life. They're really, really neat. Um, I do recommend that what you do is you work on um, practicing to get to know dragons, because dragons have a very distinct energy. Like they're usually really big, and they take up like a whole room, and they don't stay static. They're not like souls, where oftentimes, and souls, don't get me wrong, souls can move around the room. Of course, they're in spirit form, but oftentimes, let's say spirit guides they'll pick a spot and they'll kind of stick with it, but doesn't mean they can't go to different areas around you. But for that session with them, that moment with them, they'll usually pick one spot, but sometimes they'll move a little bit here and there. Whereas dragons, they're constantly like moving around in your room or in your vicinity. It could be outside as well. So just pay attention to that. And when you get used to using your different clairs, like your clairvoyant, your clairseeing, your clairaudient, your clairhearing, your clairsentient, and so on, sensing, feeling, you'll get to know that dragons have a very distinct energy about them and very distinct characteristics that's unlike anything else of any of the elementals. And they're definitely way different than any celestial beings like angels and stuff like that. Completely different, but they're just a lot of fun. They're just a lot of fun. I love working with dragons. I work with dragons quite often. And thank you for bringing up the question. Um, yeah, really, really great question. All right, let's get to our next question. Um, so how about remote viewing? Okay, so what remote viewing, just so those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically where we astral project ourselves. So it's astral projection. Um, Dream walking is another form of it. When you're in dream state, that's astral projection, dream walk. So what you do is you lay on the ground or on a bed or something like that, and um, you allow your body to vibrate at a higher level so that it can leave your body, but it's still tethered through a tether. And then you can leave your body, and then you can go and you can kind of float around. So that's astral projection. But what remote viewing is, you actually don't need to leave your body to do it. So um, the military, for example, they'll hire like these people that are really talented at this to go ahead and remote view and see the enemy compounds, so that they can get intelligence about their enemy and what's going on there without even before satellites, things like that. So they could do things like that, and the person who's remote viewing could actually go inside the buildings and see what's going on inside, stuff like that. So I actually teach my students how to do remote viewing in my channeling level 4, my animal healing and communication workshop, where I'll actually have you practice remote viewing another person's pet. So I tell my students, don't say anything about where your pet is in your house, or are they, inside or outside or whatever. And I put them into groups of 2, and then I have them practice remote viewing their partner's pet to see if they can figure out where they are and describe what's around them. And that's how people can find lost pets, things like that. So remote viewing is actually a really cool technique. It's one of my favorites to teach my students. I really enjoy it, really love it. And then another question that came in from Joseph is, and Joseph, by the way, where are you from? Just go ahead and say hi. If you're watching this right now, feel free to just type in where you're from and say hi. I would love to hear from you. And if you have any questions about spirituality, go ahead and type that in. This is the Ask Ken show. So another question from Joseph is, how about channeling self or others from the future? Okay, so from the future. So I'm going to answer this question in 2 ways, because I'm not sure which angle Joseph's asking. So I'll just do it in both ways. So let's say right now, right here, right now, you want to get a future-based message about someone else. So there is a concept called It's called timelines. Okay, so the way that timelines works is that you have a timeline that you're going on, and then the way that you get a future-based answer, let's say the person's right here right now, is you can jump forward into their timeline to see the trajectory that they're on that's most likely to occur. So that's called timelines. I cover this topic in channeling level 3, and then I've done entire like 2-hour trainings on timeline healing, and all sorts of other cool things to do with timelines in my master channeling mastermind classes. And there's a recording there. If you make it to level 3, then you'll qualify for that. So timelines is the way that people get, like psychics get future-based messages about people, is they just basically they jump into their timeline. Have you ever had a deja vu? I think we all have, right? I know I get them quite frequently. So what a deja vu is basically you're here in this time in your lifetime, and then what you do is, like, at some point, maybe at night or whenever, you might jump into the future, experience that, and then you go back to your current present time. And then when you're going along, living your life, maybe a few days later, then you're all of a sudden you get to that point again in that timeline, and you're like, hey, feels like I've been here. Like, I feel like this has happened before. I'm having such a major deja vu. And that's because you literally have lived that before, and now you're just reliving it again a couple of days later. So that's how deja vu works when you get future-based information. Um, the only caution that I get with people is I say to them, uh, careful about trying to live your life too much in the future, because I have so many students that are constantly like, oh, this is going to happen in the future, that's going to happen, I'm going to fill coliseums full of people, and they keep living in the future, in the future, in the future. And I'm like, who's to say that? I mean, yeah, I get that's a good goal and aspiration, but we have this magical, amazing thing called free will. And so at any time, we could take a left or take a right instead of taking a left, or we can make a different decision or whatever, and that could change our whole trajectory, and not necessarily in a bad way, but just in a different way. And so a better question that I ask my spirit guides is, instead of saying, oh, am I going to fill up a coliseum full of people, or am I going to get on Oprah? Another question I ask is, what do I need to do right now to fill a coliseum full of people? What do I need to do right now to eventually get on Oprah? And I work on the now and the present right now for my longer term goals, so that I can fill up coliseums full of people, so that Oprah will notice me and want me on her show, things like that. Does that make sense? And then the other question I think Joseph is asking is, how about channeling self or others from the future? So, what I believe he's implying here is that if this is us right now and this is our present moment, and then we all have our future self, and there's really cool, fun exercises I do with my students around future self. So you can actually go into the future, and then you can actually tap into your future self and get your future self to help you with your present self. And that's a really cool, neat way of channeling. You tap into your timeline, and you go down that timeline, tap into your future self, and have your future self help you, inspire you, give you wisdom for your present self to help you get down that timeline, which is really neat. Thank you, Joseph. Really great questions. I appreciate you. So let's just keep going. We have Devin from Calgary. Woo, woo. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this, please just make sure you go ahead and say hi and where you're from. So we got Arthur here. Okay, how do you improve your channeling? Do you have a specific routine? So I would love to say it's just one answer. It's really like, I've been doing this nearly 20 years, where I've been teaching and training people how to channel. And my please do this. If you're watching this, take notes. Write these two things down. I do this every single morning when I wake up without fail, like every single morning. Before I even get out of bed to go pee or anything, and before I look at my phone, the very first thing I do is I put my hand on my soul. So your soul resides right here in your sternum area. You have all these different chakras. So your heart chakra's here, your solar plexus chakra's here, and right in between where your sternum bones, your rib bones meet, that's where your soul resides. So that's called the seat of your soul. And what I do, and this is the most important thing I could recommend to my students, is I put my hands on my soul every morning and I say, I love you. I love you so much. Actually, in fact, if you're watching this right now, just go ahead and do that. Just put your hands on your soul. Don't worry. Don't worry about like it being tacky or whatever. This is self-love. This is really, really important. You just focus on your soul, look down with your eyes at your soul and say, I love you. And so I do this several times in the morning before I get out of bed. And then the second thing I do before I get out of bed is I feel around me as to which one of my spirit guides are around me. And my experience training thousands of people over the years is that most people have somewhere between 3 to 5 spirit guides during any one season of their life. So let's say in this example, I'm just using a random example, but let's say I have 3 spirit guides. Actually, I'm checking. I'm like, oh yeah, I have 3 right now. So I have 3 spirit guides right now, and I ask, okay, which one of these 3 spirit guides is around me? Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's all 3, but usually it's 1 or 2. Okay, so I wake up, I'm like, okay, who's around me? Oh, it's my female guide, it's this guide. And I connect with her. I ask her if she has any messages, and I just start my connection right away, first thing in the morning. So there's a reason why I do that, because like what I've noticed with my students, I would say to them, I want them to practice channeling every day. So they take my channeling level 1 workshop, and in my channeling level 1 workshop, I teach them how to channel their soul, their higher self, and their spirit guides. And I say, there's no difference between you and I. Like I can channel, you can channel just as well as me, even better. The only difference between you and I is I've just practiced more. That's all. And because I'm disciplined, I try to make sure that I practice channeling every day, no matter what. So then as they go through my workshops, and then let's say they get into my 6-month strategic channeling program where we meet one-on-one once a month, every 6 months. And then I ask them, I'm like, oh, so did you channel your spirit guides today? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, what time? And they're like, well, like 8 p.m. at night. I'm like, 8 p.m. at night? Well, what happened to the other 16 hours? Like, or the other 12 hours or whatever it is. And I'm like, no, no, no. So channel your spirit guides first thing in the morning. That opens up the connection, gets you used to going, okay, my spirit guides are here. You start your connection. And then throughout the day, you're more likely to continue connecting with your spirit guides as you're going to work, you're going to the grocery store, you're meeting with people. You could be channeling your spirit guides during all these different times. You're driving your vehicle, whatever it might be. You can always be channeling. So the ABCs is always be channeling. And what I mean by that doesn't mean you're constantly having conversations with them, but you're always open to receiving messages for them. So you might be lunchtime at work, and they're like, hey, go for a walk in the park. And you're like, oh, okay. So you get up and you do something different that day. Instead of just sitting in the office, you get up and go for a walk in the park. And then what happens is maybe you meet someone, and then that changes the whole trajectory of your life, because you meet a different person and you listen to your guides, but you didn't know that when you heard that message, go for a walk today in the park. And then that encounter with that other person changed the whole trajectory. Or maybe it's just to get some alone time and some self-care and some decompression time. When I worked for the government, that's what I would do at lunchtime. I would just like, you know what? I need to step away from this and just go and get some, discharge time, decompression time, and all that fun stuff. So yeah, really great question. Um, and then I work also, Arthur. I work on advanced channeling techniques, like keep advancing my techniques and pushing myself, so I'm not becoming stagnant. How does channeling differ? How does channeling differ from tapping into one's inner being or ascended aspect self? So it's the same thing. So this is coming. Yeah, this is coming from Joseph. So great question, Joseph. Is how does when you channel yourself, that's channeling. When you channel your higher self, that's channeling. When you channel your spirit guides, that's channeling. When you channel other people's spirit guides, that's channeling. When you channel loved ones for yourself or other people's spirit guides, or other people, that's channeling. Or when you channel sprites, fairies, dragons, angels, crystal divas, all that, that's channeling. Channeling is channeling is channeling is channeling. So I think what the question more is, how do I know the difference? How do I discern the difference? And that takes practice. The biggest number one thing that my students struggle with is, how do I know that the message I'm getting, is it coming from me, or is it coming from my spirit guides, or is it coming from somewhere else? Like, how do I know I'm not just making it up? And I get it. It's like the biggest thing, the number one thing my students struggle with. And so there's a couple ways. Is what I do is I work with my students to very specific techniques, and there's many experiential exercises I take my students through to help them with these things. So here's one of the many that I do. Is I Let's say, for example, you have your spirit guides. Okay, so as you get to know your spirit guides, you're going to notice that each one has a different energy signature about them. They're very distinct from each other when you get to know them on more intimate levels. So then what I get them to do is, let's say this spirit guide's coming in. Okay, so this spirit guide's coming in, and they have a very distinct energy signature about them. So what I do is I say, okay, how when you hear this guide's voice, let's say it's a male voice, how does this male voice sound in your mind, in your head? Oh, well, they speak very, like, calmly, softly, very methodical, even keel, kind of a bit more monotone, okay, and on and on. So they describe, it's called clairaudient. So they describe how they hear their voice psychically in their mind. Then I say, okay, now how do you hear your thoughts? Like, listen to your thoughts right now. And your thoughts are what? Describe your thoughts. And they're like, oh, well, they're more like erratic and all over the place. And they're usually more critical, and they're more like, wow, right? So, and they describe their thoughts. I go, good. Okay, so now you know what your thoughts sound like. Now, how do your spirit guides sound? How do they hear? And then you're like, oh, yeah, no, they're definitely, he's more calm. He's more even keel. He's more methodical. When he speaks, he's very to the point and precise, and more of a masculine, deeper voice, things like that. And that's how you can tell the difference. So over time with practice, is you'll be able to discern the difference between your stuff, your thoughts, and your spirit guides, and your thoughts and your stuff and your spirit guides, and your thoughts and your stuff and your spirit guides. And over time, that gap will widen until you become a lot easier. Oh, I know for sure this is coming from my spirit guide because of this, and all the different energy signature components from this one guide, which is different than the other guides. Does that make sense? And then you work on this and you practice this, and it's called getting yourself out of the way, so that when you're getting messages for yourself, you're not influencing the answer, you're not tainting the answer. You're like, take a deep breath. And there's several other techniques that I teach and take my students through on how to get answers, and they know they're getting it from their spirit guides, and they're not influencing the answer, they're not tainting the answer, they're not getting the answer they want to get, which are all very common things that happen with a lot of people. So we have Joseph is from Bali. Who else we got here? Gray Iris is from Edmonton, Alberta. Welcome. Woo woo. If you're watching this right now, please say a hello. I will give you a shout out where you're from. And if you have any questions about spirituality, please go ahead and ask those questions in the chat, and I will get to them. Brandy is from West Virginia. Welcome, Brandy. I have lots of clients in that region. West Virginia is great. Edgar Casey area, which is so cool. Okay, so we have another question here about dreams. How do they relate to channeling, or are they not? Okay, so dreams are really important. This is covered in detail in my channeling level 3, my expert level, where we talk about dream interpretation, how to. So what happens is, when we're in awake state, oftentimes our guides it's actually really difficult for our spirit guides to get messages to us, because it's not them. Well, two things. It actually takes a lot of practice on a soul level to become a spirit guide. Like, it's not super simple, super easy. They have mentors, they have teachers and people that are mentoring them on how to be someone's spirit guide. So it's actually quite difficult. So if you ever watch that movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze, where he's trying to like move that penny, and he's like trying to get all these people's attention. He's like, come on, look, I'm here. And everyone's just walking by like they don't notice him. But when you become more spiritual, when you become more connected and you work on your ascension, you work on your healing and clearing and raising your vibration, you'll be able to observe and notice these spirits in the non-physical realm. And you'll be able to, and they'll be like, what? Someone actually can see me and notice me and pay attention to me. Wow. And that's what it's like. So if you watch that movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze, I think there's that one scene where he moves like a penny or a pencil. I can't remember exactly what it is, but he's trying and trying and trying, and finally he's able to do it. And then somebody notices that the pencil. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps right now. And then somebody notices that the pencil moves or the penny moves, and then they're like, oh, there must be someone here, like a ghost or a spirit. And it's like that's what our spirit guides are dealing with. Like it's really hard to get our attention, and most of the time it's not them, it's us. It's like, hello, big fly, anybody home? Or we're just like so consumed with the 3D world that we're not really paying attention to what's going on in the non-physical world. And that's why I teach channeling, because this physical world is just an itty bitty tip of the iceberg of what is reality, what is out there. There's so much beyond this 3D world. And when we learn how to tap into the other side, and there's like, whoa, your eyes just open up and you're like, there's so much more. And we're not just talking about psychically, we can hear, we can feel. Like I'm getting goosebumps right now. That's clairsentient, that's the sensing sensations. Yeah, that's really cool. So what happens is, because it's so hard sometimes for our spirit guides to get our attention, what they will do is they will try to get our attention while we're in dream state, while we're sleeping. Because when we're in dream state, in a good way, we're actually a lot more susceptible to be able to receive these messages, because our brain is calmed down. We're in a what is it, delta alpha state or whatever it is, those different brain states, wave states, where it's easier for them to get our attention. So what I recommend my students do is they keep like a little journal, notepad or notebook, by their bedstand, and then as these ideas come up, they just go ahead and when they wake up, they, whether it's in the middle of the night or in the morning, you go ahead and just write down and jot down some key notes from your dreams. And then when you get really good at this, and I do recommend practicing this, it's called lucid dreaming, where what I want you to do is try to practice being in control of your dreams, rather than your dreams just sort of happening to you and you being a passerby, like like just sort of like, oh, this is happening now, that's happening now. It's like, no, what if you were able to control your dreams? What if you were able to, manipulate your dreams? What if you were able to interact in your dreams? So you might be having a dream and there's somebody in your dream, rather than you just kind of passing by them, you can actually stop and talk to them. And oftentimes that will be your spirit guide. That will be your spirit guide who is in your dream state, because it's easier again for them to communicate with you. So if you're lucid dreaming, you're dreaming where you are dreaming intentionally and you are observing what you're doing, you can actually tune into that guide and then go ahead and communicate with them, which is really cool. Great question. Thank you for that question. Danielle from Alberta. Welcome, Danielle. Thank you for tuning in. She's awesome. She's taking my channeling level 1 workshop, which is so cool. We have Lori from Alberta as well, Coronation, Alberta. Caroline from Calgary. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, Lori, great to hear you. Okay, so we have another question about tarot oracle cards. When does it make sense to use tarot oracle cards versus just channeling higher self or divine being? Great question. So there's nothing wrong with using oracle cards. I love them. I think they're fun. I was at a meditation the other day at one of the big yoga studios here in Bali, and it was just phenomenal. It was so magical, and I love the lady. She's just such a beautiful soul. So wonderful. And she's like, oh, everyone come pull a card at the beginning of the class. And I participate. I have fun. Like, I don't need them, but they're just whatever. Like, they're played. Like cards, tarot cards, oracle cards, angel cards. They're fun. I don't put too much, me personally, I don't put too much weight into them. There's a lot of variables that can go into oracle cards, because someone has to create these, right? So it might be when you pull a card, let's say you pull a card, It could be the text on the card that is the message for you. It could be the picture that's the message for you. It could be the write up in the booklet that's the message for you, or it could be none of that. What I do is I just go straight to the source. I just go straight to, okay, which spirit guide is trying to give me a message, and what's the message, and I just channel the message directly. Is my higher self trying to give me a message? Okay, go straight to the higher self and get that message directly. Is my soul trying to give me a message? Okay, go to my soul, get that message directly. This way it doesn't leave any room for a misinterpretation. I'm not reading a card, and that card could be slightly, because it's impossible to not write up a deck of cards without it having being somewhat generic. It just has to be. It's just the nature of cards. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. But when I channel like either my soul, my higher self, or my spirit guides directly, then I could get specific, detailed messages that are tailored specifically to me about that certain circumstance or area of my life. Does that make sense? So if you're using cards, keep using them. Have fun with it. Don't take them too serious. Just keep them light. Keep them fun. The name of the slogan for my business. So my business is called channelinginc.com. If you haven't done so yet, please go ahead and visit my website. You'll see all my certification workshops. I train people how to do this, and you can learn how to do this. And just keep it light with fun, with spirituality. So my slogan is spirituality is meant to be fun. Why? Because so many people take spirituality so serious, and they're like, "Oh," and I'm like, man, that's like, if I was non-spiritual and I seen someone that serious, I'd be like, oh, I don't want anything to do with that. But if somebody's like fun and playful and having fun with spirituality and playing with it, I'd be like, ooh, give me more of that. Like, what are they doing? How come they're doing, like, how come you're so happy all the time and having fun and play? And don't get me wrong, I'm not happy all the time, but you get what I mean. Like, I just try to keep that on the back of my mind. Like, what if I can make spirituality fun? What if I can make spirituality playful and joyful? Like, wouldn't it just be such a more enlightened, funner experience as I'm going along this ascension process, to just keep it light and fun the majority of the time? And so that's what I try to do. Don't get me wrong. I do my healing work, my clearing work. I go see other healers and practitioners. Actually, I'm going to see a healer this weekend, and I do this on a regular weekly, monthly basis. And I recommend that my students do it. And I recommend that other practitioners do it, because please, 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 if you are going to see a healer, make sure that they're doing their healing work. If you're going to see a practitioner, make sure they're doing their healing work. Please, please, please. I've seen it so many times where other healers or practitioners, they don't do any work on themselves because they're so busy focused outside of them on others, helping others, helping others, helping others. Unfortunately, what happens, and I've been down this road, is that they become unhealthier over the months and the years, and then that affects their clients in a detrimental way. So I really emphasize for myself, I'm constantly, doing trainings and learning more new techniques and modalities. And I'm also doing my healing and clearing at the same time, so I can become healthier as I'm working and going along this ascension process to help other people become empowered by teaching them how to channel and also how to become healthier. And I also do things like ascension group healing, that once a month you can attend the ascension group healing, where I heal whole entire groups at a time. And that's super powerful. And then I also train people on how to use channeling to heal at super high levels. So healing training, using channeling as that foundation to make sure that you know what you're doing, how to check things, who you're working with, and on and on and on. So that's really, really cool stuff. So all this information is on my website, channelinginc.com. You can start channeling level 1 is the best place to start. That's a certification program where you actually get a certificate at the end of it. And then that's a prerequisite to all the other levels. So you can get more information. If you're watching this, please feel free to say hi. Thank you for tuning in. And I agree with being lighthearted when it comes to spirituality, and a ho to making spirituality fun. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. So this is the Ask Ken Show. If you have any questions at all, even if it's after this recording, you can go ahead and just message me, and I will add that to my list so that I can answer it at a future Ask Ken Show. Have a wonderful day, everyone. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to message me, and also feel free to comment on this recording below. Talk to you soon. Love you all. Namaste. Have a great day.